Hello and welcome to GYDA Talks, Grow Your Digital Agency Talks, and I am absolutely delighted to have with me as my guest today Marcus Sheridan. Now Marcus wrote not one but two books that I keep throwing at people. This one, They Ask You Answer. I keep telling people, do it. And as I was just saying to Marcus, people nod their heads, but they don't do it, especially agency folks. And the other book that I've got of his is The Visual Sale, which is, they kind of go together. Anyhow, welcome, Marcus.
Robert, pleasure to be here. I think we're going to have a great conversation today, and hopefully we'll say something valuable to your audience as well.
Good. So let's just go straight in. For those who haven't read the book, could you just give us the quick backstory to how you ended up? You didn't start as a digital marketing agency person. How you ended up with They Ask You Answer?
Well, I started a swimming pool company out of university with a couple of friends in 2001, and we struggled to grow the business, but we were slowly growing it up until 2008 when the market crashed. And that was when I thought we were going to lose the business, and we were in really bad shape. And it was during this time that I started to learn a lot more just about the internet and also how I myself use the internet, right? And started reading all these fancy phrases like inbound marketing, content marketing, all that stuff. And what I heard in my simple, pool guy mind was, Marcus, if you just obsess over your customers' questions, you might save your business. You just got to be willing to address those questions on your website through text and video. So I said, well, shoot, I can do that. So I started this philosophy at the time. We called it They Ask You Answer. It's 4 simple words. And we just said, hey, we're going to be the best teachers in the world when it comes to what we sold, which was fiberglass swimming pools. And to make a long story short, we went on to become the most trafficked swimming pool website in the world. And we got so much success from that I started to write about it, and as I wrote about it online on a personal blog, I started having these conferences say, hey, Marcus, can you share that strategy and that story at our conference? And then I started having companies say, will you teach us how to do that? And that led to starting an agency and having a full-time speaking career. And today I still own the swimming pool company, but we went on to become the fastest growing manufacturer of fiberglass pools in the U.S. as well. We have franchisees all over North America. And it's been an amazing ride, but They Ask You Answer has become a movement, a framework for many companies, many businesses, thousands actually now around the world. The book has done extremely well. It's got 2 versions, and it just keeps on growing, and it's pretty cool. You feel, it's easy to launch a book and get sales for the first 6 months. It's hard to launch a book that gets sales after the first few years. And that's exactly what's happened because it works. The philosophy is evergreen. It's not going to stop working, and that's why I'm always happy to talk about it.
So have you got evidence or hard numbers to kind of validate it works? Because I talk a lot about the They Ask You Answer, and people nod their heads sagely and they go, 5 questions, we'll come to that in the interview in a minute, and content and being teachers, and they nod their heads sagely. And then you look at their website 6 months later, and there it is, not a video in sight,
no dice.
all about them, doesn't approach. So have you got evidence? Have you got case studies, examples of agencies that you think do it really well?
Well, this is one of those things where, first of all, from a business standpoint, we've got a ton of case studies. From an agency standpoint, my personal agency, Impact, which is the URL is impactplus.com. We have done this with a ton of success, and I've not found an industry that's the exception to these principles because they're rooted in truth. And one of the issues, though, Robert, is lots of times when we talk about does something work, we have to ask, well, what's the reference by which you're framing the question, right? Because if you're saying, does it work from an SEO standpoint? That's one question. Does it work from a customer experience standpoint? That's a different question. Does it work from a website user experience standpoint, or from a higher conversion standpoint, or from a shortening your sales cycle standpoint, right? There's all these things that could dictate whether or not, quote, it works. But I can tell you without equivocation that we have the data on way too many companies. Now, if you said, I'm an inbound marketing agency, Marcus, I'm going to try to do They Ask You Answer for my agency. Is it going to be as successful as it was for your pool company? Well, probably not. And the reason why I say that is because we were in an industry where there was very little people thinking like this, right? There was, in the book, I call it the Content Saturation Index, CSI. And there wasn't a lot of content in the swimming pool industry. Now, what's true, though, is if you go around Europe, still, when it comes to a lot of the markets there, it's still pretty green when it comes to agencies really aggressively answering the questions their customers have. And they think that just because they have a blog, they're doing They Ask You Answer. And it's not the same thing. It's clearly not the same thing.
I think you're absolutely right. I think intuitively people get it, but intuitively it's kind of much easier to follow the pack. Most agencies look at all the other agencies. Oh yeah, it says the websites are all identical. We have these people. We work really hard.
That's right.
We are really interested.
That's it.
We deliver value for money, and then there'll be a picture of them either climbing a tree or pulling a rope. It is so dull and boring.
It's extremely dull. One of the things that I love to tell agencies, which they have a hard time with, is, and this is something that everybody listening to this right now, 99% of them haven't done, and that is, you should have a section that talks about who you're not a good fit for on your website. So in other words, all agencies, if they're being honest, would say, yep, we're not a good fit for either this type of customer or this type of service. Yet, how often do they definitively, clearly, distinctly state that on their website, in their messaging? And it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. It's no different than, if you understand what They Ask You Answer is, it's really three things more than anything else. It's, number one, the obsession with the questions, worries, fears, issues, concerns that buyers have. All right, that's number one. An obsession, keyword, with the questions, worries, fears, issues, concerns, questions buyers have. Number two, it's the willingness to teach buyers, customers, in the way they want to be taught. In other words, if they say, I want to see it on video, we can't say, well, video's not my thing. That's BS. It's what we tell our clients. We tell them to get over themselves, and agencies have to get over themselves as well. And then finally, number three, are we willing to sell it the way buyers want to buy it? And this is a really interesting one, Robert, because we're evolving, especially post-COVID, in terms of how we want to buy stuff. And we're all getting used to almost like that SaaS model of being able to see it, understand what it comes with, understand what the monthly cost is up front, and then making a phone call, and then possibly engaging that particular company. You don't see that in the agency world. We're still not talking about prices in the agency world, which is utterly ridiculous. And, someone should be ashamed if they're not discussing cost and price on their website, because it just means they don't really care about the questions their buyers are asking, and they're going to refuse to address it, and they're going to ignore it, and they're going to wait until they ask. That is prehistoric thinking.
So you don't think it's just a British kind of thing, which is, we don't like to talk about price because that might embarrass people. Whereas those people over the other side of the pond, they're so ballsy and so salesy. They're straight in there.
It's utterly ridiculous to blame culture on being honest and transparent, because that's not a cultural thing. And I've got plenty of clients that are in the UK. I've spoken personally in Scotland 6 times, and it's like, I know that market, and I know markets all over the world. And the beauty behind the markets is there's this thing called human psychology, which is the same behind each one of them. You can't go to any market, to a consumer or buyer today, and say, would you prefer not to learn about pricing and cost before you engage a company? And have anyone tell you, yeah, I would totally prefer that. I love being blind going into the buying process. I love ignorance. Ignorance is bliss. I like being aloof. I love being shell-shocked when I talk to an agency about their pricing. It makes me feel good. This is ridiculous thinking, because if you look at what businesses say, they justify why they don't talk about things like cost and price for three main reasons. First reason is we say, well, every job is different, our services are customized, which, if you think about that, that's even more reason why you should be talking about, okay, what are the factors that drive it up? What are the factors that keeps costs down? Why are some agencies so expensive? Why are some agencies so cheap? Etc. And where do you fall as an agency? So this whole it depends, that's the easiest and most important one to address. Now, sometimes agencies will say things like, well, we tend to be more expensive, and if we're more expensive, we just might scare them away. This is, again, completely against science. It's anti-science, it's anti-psychology. Because all the studies have shown, and anybody with any common sense knows, is that it's not when they're willing to really teach us and explain us that we get scared. It's when they aren't willing to even talk about it where seeds of doubt are planted. And we start to get annoyed or frustrated. We opt out. We don't contact them, etc. It doesn't change across the board. Services, products, B2B, B2C, business to government. I don't care. Same game, right? Third reason why we don't like to talk about cost and price is we say things like, well, our competitors might, steal our secret advantages, which, again, is really stupid, because I can tell you right now, and I've seen this in Europe and I've seen this in the US, agency people go from agency to agency. And so there ain't no secrets out there. This is not Coca-Cola. There's no secret syrup. And so once we accept that, I like to take it back to the golden rule, Robert, which is, well, if I was the buyer in this moment, the decision maker, would I like to know these things? Would I appreciate it if somebody explained them to me? Yes, yes, yes. You can't argue with the golden rule here. Now, you can say, well, I'm just not willing to follow the golden rule as an agency. Well, that's fine. I respect you for that. But let's not lie to ourselves and say, well, that's not necessarily what I would want, or that's not what my customers would want, because we all know it's obvious what they would want: honesty and transparency on the front end.
So it's what I find fascinating about it is that it's an iceberg which is kind of presented as a kind of a sales approach, but actually the way I see it is it's far more of a cultural approach. We're moving from being the precious experts who know everything, come to us and we'll tell you how much it's going to cost eventually, to actually, if we shared and we taught, people trust teachers, people love teachers, think how our relationship with our clients would change.
Correct.
And that, I think, is, for me, is a real kind of aha.
So when you say culture, this is a big deal, what you just said here, Robert, because to me, I think cultural and principle-based are very aligned, right? And so this is a principle-based conversation, which is why I don't necessarily want to go up to somebody right from the get-go and say, you really should be talking about cost and price on your website, or you should be talking about their fears, or you should be talking about some of the negative questions they're asking, or you should be doing comparisons with competitors. So it was like, I don't want to come out and say that. Here's what I want to say to somebody. And this is how I start general conversations with business owners. I'll say something like this: is trust relative? Is it important to your business? They'll say yes. Is trust going to be fundamental to your business 10 years from now? Yes. 20 years from now? Yes. Do you want to become the most trusted voice in your space? If you had a choice, would you rather be the most trusted voice? Yes, of course. Would you like to eliminate people's fears, worries, issues, concerns if you had a choice? Yes. Would you like to decommoditize that thing that you sell? Yes. Would you like to shorten sales cycles? Yes. Okay, now let's talk. Because these are the things, when you are honest and transparent, rules of life, by the way, right? When you're honest and transparent, people pick up on that so fast online. We've got this BS meter we've all grown very efficiently as we have used the internet now, really over the course of what is about 25 years. Many of us have been learning how to use the internet, and the internet has been getting better as we go with AI. But 25 years we've been practicing how to learn online. And we sense things about people, about companies. We know when they're giving us bull. We know when they're honest. And we also know that very few are very honest with us. Which is why, I talked about this on LinkedIn yesterday. And by the way, if you're listening to this right now, if you're not following me on LinkedIn, you should be, because I'm a good dang follow on LinkedIn. And there's certain things that everybody should be doing that immediately induces trust. Right? One of which, as we said earlier, is we should say very clearly who we're not a good fit for, describe our bad fit, non-fit, not in a snarky way, not an ugly way, but our non-fit customer. That's one that any single one of us can do. We should also honestly and transparently recommend alternatives, like potential competitors, to our prospects openly and transparently. So we might not be a good fit for you, but here's an example of who would be a good fit, and here's why. That's absolutely something we should be doing. Most companies aren't doing that. We should be talking about price up front and center. We should let them know front and center, hey, I'm going to be so honest and frank with you that if at any point we're not a good fit, I'm just going to let you know. That's a beautiful message. People respect that, man. They love that. And this is why, it's like one of those things, people inherently, when they read the Ask You Answer, they know it's true. Now, they might not do it, but inherently everybody knows it's true. That yes, honesty and transparency and becoming that voice of trust, it matters. It's important. And it's not something that we can just say, no, that doesn't apply to my business. Now, there might be fundamental techniques to how it's applied that could possibly change or vary from business to business or industry to industry, but the fundamentals here do not change.
But what you're saying, in a sense, if I'm picking this up correctly, is yes, the book, especially They Ask You Answer, gives you a handbook pretty much, and also
this is clear framework,
and also if lost, go to Impact, and there's more stuff than you've ever seen on one subject, and all the different sections and angles from every different angle. It's all there, and all the help and you support. But actually, it's about getting your agency in the right mindset. So this is never going to work if you're saying, we're going to do They Ask You Answer, but we're not going to share. We're going to do They Ask You Answer, and we're going to be bitchy and nasty about the competition. You're not saying that. What you're saying is about everyone says open, honest, and transparent, but you're actually saying just do it, and then people will be able to respond to it.
Yeah, and let's look at an example of this, because again, people will tell me, "Yeah, we're doing it." I'm like, "No, you're not. You're not doing it." So let's look at HubSpot for an example. There's a lot of agencies out there that are HubSpot partners. Yeah. Okay. Well, if you're a HubSpot partner, you should openly talk about who HubSpot's not a good fit for on your website. You should talk about some of the drawbacks to HubSpot. Where's HubSpot strong? Where's HubSpot weak? Like, these are things that you should be willing to talk about, because if you are, then I'm like, I respect this company immediately. Like, boom, I respect you because you have my best interests at heart. You're not just schlepping. You're not just like you haven't sold your soul to HubSpot, because you clearly recognize what it is and what it isn't, right? And so all these, just like if somebody came to me and said, well, is there an example of where They Ask You Answer doesn't work, Marcus? I'm going to say, Sure, there's examples where you wouldn't necessarily apply some of the principles. If I'm a restaurant, I don't need to become the Wikipedia of food, right? I'm not going to be that. Now, I want to be the Wikipedia of pools if I'm a pool company, right? If I'm an attorney, I want to be the Wikipedia of that particular field, that particular space. If I make particular widgets, I want to be the Wikipedia of that widget. But if I'm a restaurant, I'm going to embrace things like video and showing the story behind my food better than anybody in my space does. That's an example of a restaurant embracing the ask you answer, but it's different. But I am willing to say that. I'm willing to tell people all the time, no, we're not a good fit for you. No, you're not ready for the ask you answer. Just like if an agency tells more than 50% of the companies that come to them, yep, you should be doing this, yep, we're a good fit, they are lying. They are absolutely lying. And they might not be lying to the prospect, they're probably lying to themselves. There is no way under the stars in the sky that you are really the best option for more than 50% of the prospects that come to you. I'm not. Heck no. And in fact, we come right out and we tell people this right up front. And it releases this climactic sales process that so many have, right?
How do you get around the fact that we've got, I guess we're back to the culture thing, which is we've got targets to hit, we've got numbers to hit, we've got quotas, we've got, if we don't hit this, then the cash flow, then the FD, we need numbers, we need customers, and we need them fast, especially after COVID. So there is a pressure to deliver results. And in some senses, I guess you're saying this is like a long game that slow down and what you want will be with you.
No, I'm not saying that, Robert. Because here's the psychology that you have to understand. By me saying that, I become such a rich authority and so very different that the ones who I am a good fit for are just outrageously attracted to me and my business.
Right.
That's the difference.
So you're saying that by filtering out the people you don't want to work with, you get the really good fits. And because you have really good fits, they're going to be more loyal, more trustworthy, they're going to be more tolerant of you, but they're also going to become your ambassadors.
All those things, yes. But it's more than that. You see, when people sometimes misinterpret filtering out. Filtering out is a mutual process. It's this, when I talk to, it's like this, okay. Somebody approaches me, a company, and I've dealt with some pretty big companies that every single person listening to this is familiar with. Huge brands, multi-billion-dollar brands. When we talk on a call, I am vetting them as much as they're vetting me. Okay. And I will openly say this. Today we're going to vet each other. You need to find out if I'm a good fit for you. At the same time, I need to find out if you're a good fit for me. At any point, if it appears we're not a good fit, can we agree that we'll let each other know? Yes. Now, guess how many agencies have that type of conversation at the beginning, Robert?
Well, I think lots of people say it. I think lots of people say it.
No way. They do not say it like that. They do not say that in a frank way. Here's what they say. They get on a call and they say, tell me about your goals. Tell me about your revenue expectations. What are we looking at over the next 5 years? They do not start the conversation by saying, hey, we may not be the right fit for you. This is the purpose of this call. We're going to be more honest with you than any agency has ever been with you. Now, that's not the conversations that I'm seeing. And I'm telling you, we have a partner program. I have agencies that are constantly coming to me, talking to me about this stuff. I hear the initial conversations that they have because I'm like a mentor to many of them. It's not happening in the space. That's not the type of honesty and transparency we have. Because we're so worried about cash flow, Robert, because we're so worried about the numbers, we grovel over every lead that comes in. And it sounds very bland. And because of that, what happens oftentimes is the potential client has all the authority in the relationship. You come out the gate, and before you've even written your first contract, you've got problems with scope creep. You've got problems. Yeah. You've got problems with them asking for more and more because they feel like they're the total authority in the conversation, and that you're just the agency. You're not a true partner. Now, listen. I know there's exceptions to this. That there's somebody listening to this right now is getting so mad at what I'm saying, and they're saying, Marcus, you are full of it, guys. There are exceptions, but if we're being extremely honest with ourselves, this is the great minority of the agency world, what I'm saying here. This type of transparency, frankness, and honesty, radical candor is very rare.
Radical candor, love it. I mean, I'm 100% with you. I've run a series of programs with sales directors on selling, and it's blown my mind that people still insist on talking in a foreign language and almost deliberately trying to fool clients in order to try and just acquire them and win them. And I find that amazing. So if you are advising an agency which was just setting off on they ask you answer kind of route and road, apart from obviously buying the book and reading the book and inwardly digesting it, what do you think are your kind of the big sort of things that they need to understand to be able to deliver on it?
Well, look, I mean, if you read the book, so much starts with the big five. Those 5 main subjects that every buyer wants to know regardless of industry. They want to understand costs. They want to understand the problems and the negatives. They want to understand comparisons because they love to compare. They want to understand reviews. They want to understand what the best is, right? So these are the questions that buyers research. These are very bottom of the funnel based questions. These are not fluffy questions. These are questions that your sales team is getting all the time. These are questions that people are searching that know they're looking for an agency are asking all the time, right? And so, depending on what we're talking about here, when it comes to cost, it's not just what does an agency cost. There's a lot of things here, right? We've got content on how much HubSpot costs. We explain it, and we try to explain it better than HubSpot does. Again, so any product or software we sell, we're trying to talk about that. We have different types of offerings. So we might have workshops, we might have trainings, or we might have different coachings. We try to explain that. Now, when it comes to problems is one where, they usually, those types of questions are like, so what happens if, and it's a negative, or is it true that, or somebody told me that, right? So this could be, what are the biggest problems or negatives or drawbacks to a tool like HubSpot? What are the biggest drawbacks to inbound marketing? Let's just call it that. Or, you could even say something like, what happens when your Facebook campaigns don't actually work? Like, nobody wants to address that. Just like you don't ever see an attorney talking on their website about what happens if you lose your case, which is totally ridiculous because they lose cases all the time, right? And so that's what I mean by problems. Comparisons, this could be comparing your type of agency versus other types of agencies, your types of methods versus other types of methods, the softwares that you recommend, like the HubSpots versus the Pardots, Marketos, whatever new thing is out there. I mean, there's a gazillion of them. Like, those are the comparisons that people are asking about all the time. And when it comes to reviews, you should be reviewing your own the products that you offer. You should be talking about reviews of other companies as well, and you can read about that more in the book. Best is one of those things where people love to search for best. They might say best marketing agencies for, and the for could be the type of business. Could be for schools, could be for hospitals, could be for, right? And they're looking for their particular field, right? Their industry, and the best agencies that work therein, right? And then we talk about best tools for, right? Best marketing automation tools for, best CRM tools for. And then once again, it could be their particular need, their particular whatever that thing is. And the point of it is, though, if we produce this content, we can't stop there, because what makes this work so well is when the sales team is helping produce it. They should be part of the editorial calendar, right? Like the production of the editorial calendar. They should see what content's coming up, and they should say, yep, every single one of these I'm dealing with all the time. We're constantly hearing these questions. And then they should be integrating them into their sales process very, very intentionally. In the book, that's called assignment selling. Assignment selling is so stupidly powerful. It's no different, Robert, than if somebody hasn't read They Ask You Answer, I'm not going to sit and have a conversation with them. Like me personally. People ask me all the time, like, and I don't care if it's, I don't care if Disney came to me and said, hey, Marcus, do you want to have a conversation? I'll say, I'd love to. You got to read They Ask You Answer first. Now, if they haven't read They Ask You Answer, I'm not going to have a conversation with them because I'm going to be spinning my wheels when we talk. Right. The point of having a conversation with me is for us to now say, okay, you've read it. What do you feel like you should do? And then we can start the vetting process accordingly. But if I'm trying to convince them on the first phone call that they should be talking about cost and price, or they should be honest, they should be transparent, I'm wasting my time and I'm wasting theirs, and everybody loses.
I love it. I mean, it's kind of a full cycle, and talking to you just confirms everything I felt and feel about the book and how agencies are behaving. So, what next for Marcus? I mean, They Ask You answering for some time now. Is it more of the same, or have you got other projects?
Well, the beauty of really here's what I'm interested. This is what people think I'm a sales and marketing guy, and that's fine. But really what I am is somebody that's obsessed with clean communication. That's what I adore, is communication between humans in all of its different forms. Sometimes we call that sales conversations. Sometimes we call that marketing messaging. Sometimes we call that leadership communication or management skills. So my future is I'll be writing a lot more communication books, but I'll continue to talk about sales and marketing because the principles therein, they're eternal, they're evergreen, right? It's so wonderful. And in some ways this is disadvantageous to me because I'm not a one-trick pony. And it's in some ways harder to build a brand if you're known for many things. But I'm just too passionate about too many things. And because I'm obsessively passionate about communication, and I'm pretty good at it, well then I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to teach the world about it. And, in time, it could manifest in a different way, but you can be guaranteed it's going to have something to do with communication. It just might be called something like marketing or video or whatever that thing is.
And is that, so like yourself, I've written a number of books, and I do find that some books are 90% of a previous book because you're taking ideas on or moving on. You're going to, in some senses, They Ask is kind of the original, the Marcus Bible, if that makes sense. If you could call it
from a business standpoint, 100%. But I see my life going in a direction where I will help people reach not just professional fulfillment, but personal fulfillment as well. I mean, it's a big itch that I have. And what's interesting is because I've taught a lot of now workshops on. If anybody ever watches me on stage, they're like, this guy speaks totally different than anybody I've ever seen. And that's not a brag, it's just a different style. Some people love it, some people might not like it as much. But many people want to know, how do you pull it off? How do you do that? How do you talk to the audience real time and it never blows up in your face? And so that's a skill, right? And all that is just has to do with transformative communication. And if you can't transform lives with your communication, you're going to live such a rich, fulfilled life. And it's one that never goes away.
Yeah.
And so that's where I plan on spending a lot of time as the future rolls on, man. It's just a lot of, it's just, I'm just so passionate for these things. And that's why it's fun to get on your podcast, Robert, and talk to agency owners where this is it's a bloodbath out there right now. And let me say this too. It is not easy being an agency owner post-COVID. This is a difficult time. The struggle is real. And my agency is not immune to that at all. And so, although I see many things black and white in terms of how I might say them, it doesn't necessarily mean that my agency is living on a bed of roses and everything is just hunky-dory, because it's not. And we're in the fight and we're in the battle every day, like all your listeners are as well.
Yeah, I think the question of what will an agency look like in 2 or 3 years' time is fascinating, because there's just so much change.
Yeah, and let me say one thing to that. This is important. I don't think the future of agencies is services. I just don't believe that.
Yeah.
I believe strongly that the future of agencies is much more of a consulting, coaching, consultative model as a whole. And anybody that is in services can see how it's being commoditized, can also see how hard it is, better stated, to truly form a deep, deep bond with that company outside of their marketing department. The most successful agencies moving forward are going to be dramatically more valuable to the leadership and sales team than they are to the marketing team within that organization. And for the agencies that are listening to this, that don't have a deep relationship with the CEO of the company they're working with, the leadership team that they're working with the sales manager they're working with, there's a good chance that at some point you're going to get replaced and you're not even going to know why. You're not going to know how it happened. And that's how we have to start thinking as agencies. We're a digital sales and marketing agency. We're not a marketing agency. And it's important, I think, to have this conversation.
Totally agree with you 100%. So we're about to run out of time. Final words of wisdom from Marcus. Are there any one-liners or little pearls of wisdom you'd like to share with people that you may not have shared already?
A couple little ones that have changed my life. Number one, it's dumb not to dumb it down. It's not our goal to sound smart as agencies. It's our goal to be understood. And if we stop trying to sound so freaking smart when we're on video, when we're writing that article, and instead just speak in simple, frank terms, it's amazing how refreshing that is. So as you're hearing this, remember, it's dumb not to dumb it down. And last one I'll say is, if you try to be a jack of all trades, you will end up being a master of none. You can't do it, my friends. I've fallen into that trap many, many times. You're dramatically better off being a master of one. And so what are you the master of? If you can't answer that question, then you may need to rethink your business model.
What a place to finish. Thank you so much, Marcus, for just being wonderful, being everything we thought you were going to be. Thank you for sharing your passion and your enthusiasm for what is, to my mind, a blindingly obvious, but for some reason not taken on board concept that every agency should be looking at. And a big thank you from me for being a really great guest. Thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.